Iran, especially its capital Tehran, is facing an unprecedented water crisis.
Imagine waking up in a city where the taps are dry, the lights won't turn on, and every day feels like a struggle just to survive. This is Iran in 2025, a nation running out of water, running out of power, and running out of patience. According to the National Council of Resistance of Iran report that Iran has no light, no water, no future. Today we dive deep into the crisis fueling these massive protests, uncover the corruption and mismanagement behind it, and reveal why the Iranian people are demanding change like never before. Iran's crisis is no longer a prediction, it's a reality unfolding in real time. As of 2025, the Islamic Republic is facing the most severe combination of water shortages and power failures in its modern history. What used to be seasonal problems have now become year-round emergencies, and for millions of Iranians, daily life has turned into a battle for the most basic necessities. Iran's water reserves are collapsing. Out of its 609 underground aquifers, more than 450 are now critically depleted. Major reservoirs like Zayande Rud, once the lifeline of central Iran, have turned into cracked plains. The government still insists drought is to blame, but environmental experts, including those once hired by the state, say the truth is much more dangerous. This crisis is man-made. Mismanagement created it, and mismanagement is making it worse. Hydropower, which Iran relies on for up to 20% of its electricity, is failing at the exact moment the country needs it most. Long heat waves driven by climate shifts push temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius, but Iran's dams don't have water left to spin the turbines. Cities like Avaz, Shiraz, and Isfahan experience routine blackouts, sometimes lasting 6 to 10 hours a day. Even Tehran, the capital the regime has always tried to protect, faces rolling power cuts. The crisis is so severe that in late 2025, Iranian officials quietly admitted what they avoided for decades. Iran no longer has the water resources to sustain its current population and economic model. It's a rare moment of honesty from a regime built on denial. The collapse is happening on two fronts. First, groundwater is disappearing. Iran pumped so much water from its aquifers that land in cities like Tehran, Varamin, Kazvin, and Mashhad has begun sinking. In some areas at a catastrophic 30 to 40 centimeters per year. Once land subsides, it can never recover. Scientists describe it as permanent damage to Iran's geological foundation. Second, power generation is collapsing with it. When water dries up, dams stop producing electricity. When electricity drops, water purification plants, pumps, and desalination systems shut down. It becomes a vicious cycle. No water means no power. No power means no water. Ordinary people feel this collapse before anyone else. Hospitals struggle to keep generators running. Factories halt production. Food prices soar because irrigation canals are empty. Farmers in Khuzestan, Fars, and Sistan Baluchistan say their crops are turning to dust. One Iranian environmental advocate summed up the situation with a chilling warning. Iran is entering the era of uninhabitable zones. The terrifying part, he said that in 2025, not 2050. The water and power crisis is no longer a slow-moving threat. It is a national emergency, growing faster than Iran's government can cover up. And behind this collapse stands a deeper, more explosive truth, one that exposes why every attempt to fix the crisis has failed. To understand why Iran is running out of water and electricity, you must understand one core truth. Corruption isn't just part of Iran's system, it is the system. The crisis gripping the country isn't only about droughts or climate change. It's the product of decades of theft, lies, and decisions made by officials who never suffer the consequences. For years, authorities blamed foreign enemies, sanctions, and unusual weather patterns. But inside Iran, environmental scientists and former ministry workers have repeated the same warning. The crisis is political. Mismanagement is intentional. Corruption is the root.
The regime has treated Iran's natural resources like a private ATM, draining them for profit. How corruption broke Iran's water system. For decades, the IRGC, ministries, and regime-linked companies built illegal wells, unauthorized dams, and destructive mega-projects, not because Iran needed them, but because powerful people earned money from them. Permits to drain aquifers were handed to politically connected landowners, even in regions already on the brink of collapse. As one former water engineer said, "We are pumping the country to death so someone can get rich today, while millions will pay the price tomorrow." Dams built for profit, not for Iran. Iran built over 600 dams, many unnecessary, environmentally damaging, and pushed forward because IRGC-owned companies profited from construction contracts. Oversight didn't exist, kickbacks did. The results were catastrophic. Rivers dried up. Wetlands turned to salt fields. Aquifers collapsed. Farmers abandoned their homes. As an Iranian hydrologist put it, corruption built dams, corruption destroyed rivers, corruption killed our water. The power crisis. Same corruption, new victims. Blackouts aren't simply technical failures. Billions meant to modernize Iran's aging power grid disappeared into private pockets. Hydroelectric plants faltered as water sources collapsed. Much of Iran still uses decades-old systems that crack under even normal demand. And when blackouts hit, elites stay comfortable. Their neighborhoods rarely lose electricity. Ordinary citizens suffer, while those responsible remain untouched. Silencing science. Iranian scientists warned about groundwater depletion, land subsidence, and dam mismanagement for decades. But the government chose repression over reform. Environmentalists were arrested, research was banned, warnings were dismissed as political. In 2018, several environmental experts were jailed on baseless espionage charges, simply for studying Iran's ecological collapse. Many scientists fled the country. Those who stayed faced pressure and censorship. One Iranian academic summarized it perfectly. In Iran, corruption is not a leak in the system. Corruption is the system, and water is the first victim. Iran's water and power collapse didn't happen overnight. It was built, step by step, year by year, by a regime that refused to listen, refused to reform, and refused to put the public first. Now the consequences are falling squarely on the people the regime ignored for decades. If corruption is the disease, the Iranian regime is the patient, weak, self-serving, and incapable of real reform. For over 40 years, Iran's rulers have held power not by serving the people, but by controlling and suppressing them. Today, that misrule is at the heart of Iran's water and power collapse, prioritizing power over people. The Islamic Republic's leadership has consistently placed political survival above public welfare. The supreme leader and the IRGC oversee enormous economic empires, controlling oil, gas, electricity, construction, and telecommunications, while ordinary Iranians live with daily shortages, blackouts, and empty taps. A retired Tehran resident described it simply: "They've stolen the oil fund and left us destitute." While schools, hospitals, and factories crumble, the regime spends billions on nuclear ambitions, proxy wars, and foreign militias. In Syria alone, Iran has funneled $50 billion to support Assad, while domestic infrastructure rots. Hezbollah receives roughly $700 million annually, funded by the same electricity, water, and taxes the Iranian people provide. Ineffective policies, empty promises. When rivers dry, the government briefly releases water from dams just to quiet protests. When blackouts surge, they lecture citizens with campaigns like the 25-degree campaign, while IRGC-linked crypto farms burn through massive amounts of electricity.
The double standard is obvious. Elites enjoy stable power and water. Ordinary Iranians endure outages, rationing, and pollution. These shallow fixes ignore the real causes: mismanagement, elite corruption, and refusal to prioritize citizens. The regime's deadlock. Real solutions would require dismantling the same networks that keep the regime alive: the IRGC's economic control, foreign interventions, and ideological spending. That's why nothing changes. Energy Minister Ali Abadi admitted in May 2025, "We have had no new power investments in 3 years, even as electricity is siphoned off for IRGC crypto operations." The message from the public is clear. They no longer trust the regime. They see its incompetence and greed as the direct cause of water shortages, blackouts, and economic suffering. Iran's poor regime isn't just failing, it's fueling the crisis. And until the system changes, the shortages will continue, and so will the protests.
While Iran's corruption and mismanagement lie at the heart of the crisis, environmental and geopolitical factors have amplified the disaster, turning a series of missteps into an existential threat. Climate change, nature as an unforgiving enemy. Iran is experiencing one of the worst droughts in modern history, now stretching into its 6th consecutive year as of 2025. Rainfall has declined by roughly 43% compared to previous years. While temperatures rise, heat waves intensify, and desertification accelerates. Even water-rich provinces are not spared. Cities like Tehran face the very real threat of partial evacuation if taps run dry. For decades, Iran's leadership treated water as limitless. Dam construction, groundwater extraction, and irrigation projects were pursued without regard for environmental sustainability. Experts now warn that Iran suffers water bankruptcy. Demand far exceeds natural supply. A Forbes report notes, sanctions on Iran will be lifted one day, and conflicts will eventually end. But a collapsed water system, destroyed land, and eroded public trust cannot be easily repaired. Geopolitical pressures and sanctions. External pressures have compounded the crisis. The Trump administration's maximum pressure policy revived and intensified sanctions, isolating Iran from the global economy. Israel and the US conducted unprecedented strikes on Iranian infrastructure, targeting nuclear and military sites. However, even with these pressures, the most devastating blows are internal and environmental. Drought and resource depletion have done more to threaten Iran's stability than airstrikes or sanctions alone. Sanctions also limited access to modern technologies for water management and power generation, slowing upgrades to the electrical grid and water infrastructure. Yet, even when sanctions were eased, the regime channeled windfall revenues into politically driven megaprojects, dams, water transfers, and energy-intensive industries, instead of sustainable reforms. Water mismanagement as a strategic problem. Iran's government has prioritized resource allocation to politically important industries and military-linked projects. Rivers like the Karun and Zayandeh Rud have been diverted to industrial and IRGC-owned facilities, leaving agricultural areas parched. Groundwater overdraft is severe, affecting over 75% of Iran's land, causing land subsidence, soil salinization, and aquifer collapse. NCR Iran reports highlight, water has been turned into a private commodity for elite profit, while ordinary farmers lose their rights and livelihoods. The role of foreign partners. China's role in Iran's energy and infrastructure sector through their 25-year strategic pact has brought machinery, dam equipment, and industrial support. But while foreign investment can modernize Iran's systems, it also strengthens a model that favors political elites and heavy industries over ordinary people who still struggle for basic water and electricity. Global oil and gas trends add more pressure. When oil prices rise, Tehran ramps up water-hungry petrochemical and steel production. And during economic downturns, the regime turns to quick profit ventures like cryptocurrency mining, sucking up massive amounts of electricity while everyday Iranians continue to suffer rolling blackouts. The convergence of threats.
As NCR Iran puts it, the convergence of enemy, drought, and lies has created a scenario worse than what Trump and Netanyahu could have deliberately designed. The crisis is not just environmental or political, it is structural and systemic. Climate change, sanctions, foreign interventions, and global market pressures exacerbate a country already weakened by decades of mismanagement, corruption, and elite self-interest. Iran's water and power crisis isn't abstract, it's a daily struggle for millions. From Tehran to Sistan-Baluchistan, people are living in a country where taps run dry, electricity fails without warning, and the cost of basic survival grows each day.
Urban hardships. In big cities, water rationing and low pressure are now routine. High-rise residents carry buckets to upper floors just to cook or wash. Rolling blackouts in Tehran, Yazd, and other provinces leave millions without air conditioning during 40 to 50 degrees Celsius heat waves, plunging homes into darkness and bringing daily life to a stop. Industries are breaking under the strain. In Gonabad, a fish farm lost 2 tons of fish after an unannounced outage. In Kazvin, a factory worker said, 3 times today the power went out and came back. All our sheets, each worth 60 million rials, are ruined. Our CNC machines are broken. We're exhausted. Wealthier families rely on generators, but poorer households endure extreme heat with no fans or AC. Even streetlights go dark at night, raising safety concerns and disrupting normal social life. Rural struggles. In rural provinces, the situation is even worse. Hundreds of villages rely entirely on tanker trucks after wells dried up. Farmers in Khuzestan, Isfahan, and Yazd have seen once fertile fields turn to dust. Wheat, rice, and sugar beet crops are dying, driving up food prices and deepening poverty. Reports from NCR Iran note rising tensions. Farmers accused the IRGC's water mafia of diverting water to industry, at times damaging pipelines in protest. Water scarcity is sparking real conflicts between provinces and communities. Public health impact. Failing infrastructure has created a cascading health crisis. In Khorramshahr, tap water turned muddy and salty, causing widespread gastrointestinal illnesses. Hospitals struggle with blackouts, interrupting equipment and medicine refrigeration. Heat waves combined with outages trigger heat stroke, while winter gas shortages lead to unsafe heating and carbon monoxide poisoning. Environmental decline deepens the suffering. Dried lakes like Urmia and the Hamoons fuel massive dust storms, worsening respiratory problems. And as rural families flee collapsing livelihoods, slums swell in major cities, increasing unemployment and social tensions, especially among marginalized regions like Khuzestan, Sistan-Baluchistan, and Kurdistan. Economic toll. Iran's economy also suffers. The Iran Chamber of Commerce estimated in 2023 that power outages alone caused nearly 18 trillion tamans, $200 million, in daily losses, mostly in the industrial sector. Factories halt production, small businesses collapse, and tens of thousands of workers face temporary unemployment. As Forbes reported, a nationwide drought with this duration and intensity can paralyze any system. Scarcity quickly turns into anger. Iran's water and electricity crises aren't just technical issues, they are humanitarian disasters. Ordinary citizens suffer as elite corruption and mismanagement prioritize industry and foreign projects over daily needs. Life has become a daily fight for water, power, and survival, fueling frustration, social unrest, and nationwide protests. The suffering caused by water shortages, blackouts, inflation, and mismanagement has sparked waves of protests across all 31 provinces of Iran, uniting citizens from every walk of life. These are not isolated demonstrations. They are part of a broader, nationwide movement demanding accountability and systemic change. Urban protests. In Tehran, Mashhad, and Isfahan, streets have been filled with workers, students, and retirees protesting rolling blackouts, power cuts, and water scarcity. Citizens have taken to chanting slogans like "Bread, Dignity, Freedom, Mashhad."
The enemy is right here. They lie when they say it's America. Kerman Shah. The protests are increasingly creative and symbolic. Bakers dump spoiled dough on the streets to protest unreliable electricity. Truck drivers block highways, disrupting transportation networks to call attention to fuel and water shortages. These acts of civil defiance are coordinated, persistent, and increasingly difficult for authorities to suppress.
Rural uprisings. In rural provinces like Sistan, Baluchistan, Khuzestan, and Yazd, farmers and villagers are mobilizing against the diversion of water to elite industries and IRGC-controlled projects. NCRI Iran reports highlights that local communities have staged sit-ins, blocked canals, and protested near government offices to demand access to water and fair distribution. The drought has become a flashpoint for deeper political grievances. Citizens are not only protesting for survival, they are demanding that the ruling regime take responsibility for decades of mismanagement, corruption, and prioritization of foreign wars and elite enrichment over domestic welfare. Organized resistance units. Beyond spontaneous demonstrations, resistance units play a crucial role in coordinating and sustaining protests. These networks of activists, operating under great personal risk, organize rallies, mobilize communities, and document abuses by the regime. Their efforts ensure that protests are not fleeting or isolated events, but part of a sustained national movement for change. Youth and student participation. Young Iranians are at the forefront of the protests. University students face massive pressure from unemployment, educational limitations, and rising living costs, pushing them to join street demonstrations and online campaigns. The regime's arrest of over 90,000 students during 2022 to 2023 protests underscores the threat it perceives from this demographic. Despite the repression, students continue to mobilize, often using social media and encrypted networks to evade government surveillance. Key themes in protests. The protests across Iran reflect more than just immediate hardships. They reveal frustration with the IRGC and supreme leaders' economic monopolies, anger at corruption, mismanagement, and resource misallocation, a desire for transparency, accountability, and fundamental freedoms, resistance against elite-driven policies that prioritize nuclear projects, military expansion, and foreign proxy wars over citizens' basic needs. As NCRI Iran highlights, these movements are a unified cry against systemic oppression. From the crowded streets of Tehran to the sun-scorched villages of Sistan, Baluchistan, a wave of protests has emerged across all 31 provinces, reflecting a nation on the brink of a transformative reckoning. Government response. The regime's response has been a combination of denial, repression, and propaganda. Authorities have arrested protesters, deployed security forces, and attempted to redirect blame toward foreign enemies. Yet, these tactics have largely failed to quell unrest. Instead, they have fueled public anger and reinforced the perception that the ruling elite is disconnected from the needs of ordinary Iranians. In Iran, the protests over water and electricity are not just a symptom of mismanagement, they are a direct response to decades of neglect, corruption, and elite prioritization of resources. Citizens across the country are fed up with the daily hardships imposed by the regime's failures. Water crisis protests. Iran is facing one of the worst droughts in its history, now entering its 6th year. Rivers have dried, aquifers are depleted, and cities like Tehran face the threat of day zero, when taps run completely dry. Officials have already reduced water pressure, imposed rationing, and floated plans for partial evacuation if the rains do not come. The public anger over water scarcity has manifested in street demonstrations, sit-ins, and direct action against local authorities. Farmers in Sistan, Baluchistan, Yazd, and Khuzestan have blocked canals, protested near water reservoirs, and confronted government offices demanding fair water distribution. Citizens are acutely aware that the water crisis is man-made, resulting from decades of overpumping, inefficient irrigation, and diversion of resources to IRGC-controlled industries. Electricity crisis protests. The electricity crisis compounds public frustration. By early 2025, over 70% of the country faced unannounced blackouts, some lasting hours or even days. Hospitals, schools, industrial zones, and households were thrown into chaos. In southern provinces like Khuzestan, Hormozgan, and Bushehr, temperatures exceeding 50 degrees Celsius made power outages life-threatening. Protests have erupted in urban and industrial centres where businesses and livelihoods are destroyed by unreliable power. Bakers have dumped spoiled dough, fish farmers have lost entire stocks, and factory workers have faced machine failures and financial losses. Protest slogans have reflected both the anger and irony of citizens' plight. Crypto for the guards, blackouts for the people. Yazd. Dear Electricity Administration, this is the mess you've created for us. What are we supposed to do with your incompetence? Shiraz. Baker. These protests are not random. They are highly symbolic, representing the public's rejection of the regime's priorities, which funnel vast resources into IRGC cryptocurrency mining, nuclear projects, and foreign proxy wars, while ordinary citizens suffer in darkness. Unified cry for survival and change. The convergence of water and electricity crises has transformed ordinary grievances into a national movement demanding accountability and systemic reform. People are not just protesting for survival, they are protesting against a regime that consistently prioritizes elite enrichment, militarism, and foreign ambitions over the welfare of its citizens. As NCRI Iran observed, Iran's people are no longer pleading, they are demanding a new future and fundamental changes. Impact and escalation. The protests over water and electricity are spreading rapidly, linking rural and urban populations in a shared struggle for basic rights and dignity. Citizens are increasingly aware that these crises are interconnected with corruption, mismanagement, and elite monopolies. Each blackout, each dry faucet, reinforces the perception that the regime is incapable and unwilling to meet the basic needs of its people, fueling further unrest. Iran is facing a triple crisis: water scarcity, electricity shortages, and nationwide unrest, all fueled by decades of corruption, mismanagement, and elite monopolization. Experts warn that avoiding full-scale collapse will require urgent, strategic, and courageous reforms. Number 1. Shift from a resistance economy to a resilience economy. For years, Tehran has prioritized nuclear ambitions, proxy wars, and elite enrichment over citizens' basic needs. This resistance economy has drained resources and pushed the country to the brink. Iran must pivot toward a resilience economy focused on sustainability and public welfare. Phase out water-intensive crops in arid regions. Reform energy and water pricing gradually while protecting poor households. Invest in ecosystem restoration instead of wasteful dams and water transfer megaprojects. As Forbes warned in November 2025, avoiding a full-scale breakdown will require choices more difficult than any imposed from abroad. Number 2. Transparency and public accountability. A core failure of Iran's leadership is secrecy. Key data on water, dams, and electricity is often classified or manipulated, deepening public distrust. Iran must release real-time, accurate water and power data to the public, educate citizens using science, not propaganda, involve communities in resource management and conservation. Forbes noted, the lies, the refusal to acknowledge limits, to confront mismanagement, and to tell citizens the hard truth is the one threat fully under the Islamic Republic's own control. Number 3. Reform water management and infrastructure. Iran's water shortages stem from decades of over-extraction, inefficient irrigation, and political favoritism. Key reforms must include modernizing irrigation systems, prioritizing fair water distribution to major population centers, restoring aquifers and wetlands, preventing IRGC-linked industries from hoarding water and electricity. Without these steps, the environmental damage will soon become irreversible. Number 4. Limit corruption and redirect resources. Iran's crises are inseparable from the IRGC's vast economic empire.
which diverts national wealth into foreign militias, crypto mining, and collapsed pension funds. Needed actions: stop unregulated water and energy usage by elite-controlled entities. Redirect resources toward infrastructure, healthcare, and the civilian economy. Establish independent audits to rebuild trust. Number 5. Prepare for climate change and intensifying drought. Climate change will push Iran's already fragile environment into greater danger. Iran must invest in renewable energy, expand desalination and water recycling projects where practical, develop long-term adaptation plans for agriculture and urban growth. Number 6. Empower citizens and support participation. Iran's people are already protesting for survival. Real change requires involving them. Support local water conservation and energy efficiency initiatives. Open channels for public feedback on infrastructure planning. Encourage grassroots monitoring of corruption and misuse. Empowered citizens can turn unrest into innovation if the government listens. Iran stands at a historic crossroads. Continue the current path of corruption, secrecy, and mismanagement, risking environmental collapse and national instability. Or choose transparency, sustainability, and public-centered reform, restoring water, electricity, and trust. As Forbes warned in November 2025, if those lies continue, nature will do quietly and irreversibly what sanctions and airstrikes could not: bring a proud civilization to its knees. Iran's future depends not on external pressure, but on internal honesty, accountability, and immediate action. And there you have it. Iran is standing at a crossroads, facing water shortages, electricity blackouts, and a population demanding change. The crises are real, the suffering is immense, and the path forward is urgent. But solutions exist, rooted in transparency, accountability, sustainable management, and citizen empowerment. The question now is not just if Iran can survive these challenges, but if its leaders have the courage to confront the truth, act decisively, and secure a future for millions of its citizens. The people are watching, the world is watching, and history will remember the choices made today. Thank you for watching. If you found this video insightful, like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on the latest geopolitical crises shaping our world.